Hey everybody, Greg Barron, Professor of Real Estate. Today I want to talk about two words that are overused in business. And after almost 40 years in business, I want to clarify something. The two words that are used a lot are motivation and discipline. I think about these words because earlier in my career, I thought I needed to be motivated. It took me almost 3 decades of being in business and starting things and some successes and a couple of failures to learn there's a striking difference between motivation and discipline. I've had the opportunity to sit at the feet of some pretty crazy successful people. They would be normal. They would be people that you would walk up in a Starbucks and sit down, and they would invite you to sit with them and have a cup of coffee. But one in particular is a friend of mine that I've known for, 20, 25 years. His name is Dr. David Cook, and he is a sports psychologist. He wrote a book called Greatness. If you don't have a copy of that, you ought to get one. It's rather expensive, but man, it's got some nuggets in there. And he really distills down this difference of what is the difference of elite to good. He's had the opportunity to work with some of the greatest sports figures in all of the world. He worked for the San Antonio Spurs. He's worked with some of the top flight golfers out there, and mainly what he tries to do is elevate their game, elevate their play from being great to being elite. So one of the things that sets most of the elite apart is their incredible attitude towards discipline. Not motivation, but discipline. And it's a huge difference. So in my own personal life, we birthed 5 operating companies to date right now that are still active. And one of the things that I preach with my staff, no matter what kind of company it is you need to do things on a consistent basis, regardless of whether you like to do them or not. And when you get into business and you're running a business, there are going to be days that you don't feel like getting up. There are going to be days that you don't feel like closing on time. There are going to be days when you don't feel like making 15 phone calls to customers. Those are common. And I'm going to tell you, after almost 40 years in the business, I have to push myself sometimes. I'm not necessarily motivated, but I know I have to do the things that I don't want to do sometimes on a regular basis, on a consistent basis, to achieve the things that ultimately are in my ultimate vision. Now, let me give you an example that many of you can relate to. Here we are, started in the first of the year, and did you know last week was the great quitting week? Most people, they think about January 1st and they think about, well, I'm going to set all of these resolutions to be a better me, whatever that is. And most of the time, that's why fitness companies, they see an uptick in their membership during January. I know I work out 4 to 6 days a week regularly, and I have most of my life. And I really get ticked off when I go to the gym in early January because before I've got my space, but during the first 2 weeks, it's totally crowded. And then after the second or third week, it's historically the same thing. It starts to get less and less and less, and we go back to having the same people that were there the whole year before. So do I like working out every day? Well, hell no. I mean, like this morning, for example, I'm getting ready to travel this afternoon back to Dallas, Fort Worth, and then I'm thinking about I've got to go to Philadelphia later to do some consulting with a friend of mine up there that I've had for years. The last thing I wanted to do this morning was hit the gym, but I knew that I had to. I knew that I didn't want to do it, and I ultimately knew that I had to keep the cadence that I've kept for years and years. So I've developed triggers in me. I'll give you a simple one for me. And it's always important to have these triggers that kind of push you into that discipline. Every morning when I get up, which is fairly early, the first thing that I do is I want to make sure that I get my workout gear on and I tie my shoes. Now you might say that's pretty simple. Well, what I have trained my brain to do is say, if I don't commit to tying my shoes, if I sit there on the bed dangling my feet, or if I go downstairs and I drink that extra cup of coffee barefooted in my robe, I can sit there, and I've actually sat there and looked at my tennis shoes and going, I don't want to put you on, because if I do, I'm fully committed. So my trigger for me to working out in the mornings is to tie my tennis shoes. I mean, it's just so simple. But you've got to develop those triggers in your life to stay disciplined. I'm not motivated. Motivation is an emotion. But let me read you these things. That's the difference. It might help you. So here's the core difference. Motivation is the desire or drive to take action. Discipline is the ability to take action consistently, regardless of how you feel. Motivation comes from emotions, from inspiration or external rewards. Discipline comes from habits, commitment, and internal control. Motivation is temporary, and that's a big thing right there. Fluctuates based on feelings and circumstances. Discipline is long-term. It remains stable even when motivation is low. Motivation requires external triggers, goals, rewards, excitement. Discipline requires internal commitment and structured habits. Motivation says, I feel like doing it. Discipline says, I do it because it's necessary. And as I look back on the creation of the companies that we have, and I look back on the leadership that we have, and I look back on the incredible successful people out there, and the one salient difference in most of their lives is they are disciplined. Now, true, motivation comes and goes. And I'm not totally dissing on all of that, because there are times when I need to listen to people to get my emotions back up. There are times where I need to attend events that are rah-rah, but not very often for me anymore. And I think if you asked really successful people, you take Jeff Bezos, for example, do you think the guy needs to go to a rally to do what he needs to do? No. Do you think Bill Gates does? No. Do you think any of these superstar athletes that are elite at their game have to continually be propped up and tell them and try to control their feelings to do what they do? Not at all. I would say that the one difference that all of them have is their incredible discipline, regardless if they feel like doing it or not. I know back when I did a story on Ben Hogan, who was one of the greatest golfers there ever was. I've got it in my book, Resilience. I tell the story of how Ben Hogan, at a very young age, would go caddy and to make money to survive. Basically, it's an incredible story. And in the times between caddying, he would hit shots over and over and over again. He would go from the bunkers, and he would just hit sand shots from different directions and different angles. He would work on his short game. He would continually move back his shot to where he practiced from every angle. And most of the major golfers, that's what they do. It's not that they go out, I think of John Daly, who goes out with the cigarette and puts his Coke down and says, here, watch this. He is the exception to the rule. Most all the elite sit there and practice one shot, one particular aspect of their game over and over again. Now, disciplined business people, they do the very same thing. They have a routine. They have a very disciplined routine. I heard Jamie Dimon, the chairman of JP Morgan, talk about this morning on a video. He said, the major difference of me and everybody else is I have a routine. I'm up at 5 o'clock. I have 5 newspapers that I read. I do it the same way every time. Once I'm finished with that, I go to the gym. After I go to the gym, I have breakfast. And then I start my day, and I time block the rest of the day, and I do this rinse and repeat every day. It's not these huge leaps of wins that they have. Typically, the wins come when you stay in the game regardless of how you feel. And there's going to be so many days when you don't feel like showing up. Back when I was working from my home between jobs in my very early age, I had cashed out of a deal and I made one of my bedrooms into my office. And one of the little bitty things that I did that triggered me is I got up at the same time still. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had my computer. I think I had a computer back then. Maybe I had a ticker tape. I don't know. I'm pretty old. But I would get up. I would dress up the same way I always did before that I would go to the office, and I would sit my butt in the seat every day just to make sure that I was still disciplined in the habit of going to work, even though it was next door to where I got out of bed. So try to lean into discipline in 2025. My coach asked me to give her a word for this year that I wanted to anchor into. And my word this year was increase my discipline, especially my time management. So that word might be important to you as well. Make sure that you fully understand it. Make sure that you do those things that create habits that ultimately create results. Whether you're in the real estate business or whether you're running another operation, whatever business you're in, lean into discipline in 2025. Hey, thanks for joining me. Make sure and like and subscribe if you enjoy the channel. And as always, educate to evaluate so that you can ultimately execute. And by the way, use discipline in execution. We'll see you soon.